Yeah, I think one of the definitely unanswered questions, or well, maybe not answered questions, but mysteries, is we don't know very much about Newt and Galley's father. He was clearly an interesting person, of big enough to be on Desert Island Discs, but what did he actually do?
Well, he wrote a book, and honestly, about that point on Desert Island Discs, that was pretty much that would have been an acceptable qualification. This is pre-celebrity, this is like pre the celebrity movement. If you've written a book, Desert Island Discs will have you, absolutely. If you're an academic, yes. They just, would expect you maybe to have a few more things to do than just request discs for a Desert Island.
Could anyone else place his accent?
Oh.
No. He didn't sound Yorkshire.
No, it definitely had a European.
Yeah.
German. I don't know. I mean, Austrian. I don't know. There was definite European twins. You're right. We don't know.
But not a European name.
Well, of course, many names did get changed. When people move countries, and families move countries, names do get changed. As of course we've noticed in this.
Very true.
Are you right? Good unanswered question.
Another unanswered question that I think we get right is obviously Galley phoned Newt to ask him to deputise for her at one of the midnight and noon events. So what was Galley doing? Why was she so busy? What was so important that she couldn't make it?
1915.
I was wondering that as well, and I don't know.
No, we don't know, and we have no clues. So
yeah.
No, I don't think there's much. I think that one is the pure thing. I can't think of anything it ties into.
Aside from being plot relevant for him, then having to acquire a hat.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel
here's the annoying thing, because the show does so much filling in and so much jigsaw pieces. When there's a little hole like that and there's nothing, it does feel a little bit. How dare you, Mr. Fidamore, not account for every single moment of every single character's life throughout their entire lifespan and throughout hundreds. There's at least one moment we don't know what someone was doing at one point, and that's just unacceptable.
As he's pointed out, you never know what's been cut for time as well. Like there are entire sketches that we might not ever get to hear. I hope he provides them for us at some point, at some forum. But yeah, snip, 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 cutting room floor.
I know it's so frustrating to know that he actually wrote a sketch that explains Newt and Galley, but it got cut. I'm sure I saw him put that on Twitter. It's so annoying though it exists and we didn't hear it.
Whatever happened to Alan?
Anyone else have any?
I didn't understand why it was that Susanna needed a child to be respectable.
I think she just wanted a child.
I think she wanted a child, but it couldn't. Galley couldn't give birth to the child because she was unmarried. Technically,
I read it that way as well. It was less about needing the child for respectability, or wanting to be able to have a child, and she had to do that while she was still technically married, sort of.
And having like the timing.
Jill, you had your hand up a second ago. Did you want to?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's like, it's the fortuitousness in that sense, as awful as it is, of like being able to like kill off their like husband in the war and have that as an opportunity to then do it without anyone like asking questions about it. Which, I don't know, I just found that really affecting and really beautiful, like in the writing of it. Yeah, and like being able to have that sort of, and Newt being like, having, being happy to fill in and have that as a thing is just so beautiful.
But,
yeah.
But the high-pitched astonishment when he realizes that he might have to do it more than once.
Yes.
Repeated applications.
That was it, yeah.
So yeah, I definitely read it more as just like they, you know, it's something that they want as a couple, and here's an opportunity to do it without raising too many eyebrows.
I mean, it does also speak to the time, the huge amounts of bending over backwards and all the various hoops that you had to do to have a relatively normal life. The kind of stuff that it is it's not that long ago when that's that, but the almost like the huge enormous strides we've had as a species, well, certainly in some countries since. But it does. I mean, it was just the whole kind of bittersweet moment, just the feeling of how this is just a reality for so many people, and it's just the way things were, and it's just all a matter of fact. There's a very much, I mean, especially in the old seasons, there's very much this is just the way things are. One has to get on with everything, and that's life throughout the whole lifestyle. This is just what you do. It was quite. Again, it's the idea about that. This is another puzzle box that has to be solved in your life.
Yeah.
So and that's clearly something that John likes a lot. Likes to put into a lot of his work is the concept of the puzzle, and these are people's lives, and they have to find there's an answer somewhere they have to find their way through, and this was
Like,
Gally and Susanna's solution.
I like Ellie's question about the medical.
Yeah, that was my understanding, that the medical assumed he was gay, and that's why he got rejected. That was the way I'd read it as well. But the official one was flat feet.
It'll be interesting to look into that, because it's not something I'm completely au fait about, of whether that was used as a historically, if people were rejected for that.
Would absolutely be rejected for that in that time period.
Well, it's not necessarily that, because I mean it was illegal at that point.
Yes.
So it would have been a more serious accusation than it might necessarily have been.
Hence
the act was illegal. Yeah. The inclination was not illegal, but would have been seriously frowned upon.
Right.
I think. And
we when Gally and Newt are talking, they're very roundabout about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very sensitive subject, and he's not comfortable talking about it, right? And so you can imagine the conversation with the doctor didn't go any better, right? And so he was like, "Oh, I understand," and then just checked him off with flat feet.
I do think it's so sad, but exceedingly understandable. Gally refers to it as a family, thinking they shared a family failing.
Yeah.
And it's such a sad thing, but that probably was how it felt at the time, even though clearly not a failing at all. But it's I think it feels very appropriate for that era to be saying it in that way.
Also, even thinking about it, just the kind of the recruiting officer, it's by putting flat feet instead of anything else, that itself is a kindness, or a believed kindness, or an attempt at being, oh, well, let's not say that, let's just put flat feet, there we go, and nothing needs to be said anymore. And that just feels, again, that there is humanity being expressed in all different ways, in all different styles, different periods, and I found that quite touching too.
One thing I heard about that was that there was this euphemism confirmed bachelor at the time. They used to refer to gay men, and then it transpires that Newt really is literally a confirmed bachelor, rather than what that phrase normally implies, which I'm rather pleased with. But a question on that I was wondering was whether the extent to which Newt sort of spills the beans over Vanessa's parentage, if it's sort of left ambiguous, so there is no definitive answer, or there are other scenes we're just not told about.
Well, they always refer to him as Uncle Newt. There's none of the other characters seem to acknowledge anything more than strong family figure. So I do kind of feel it. I mean, almost like Newt's in the SOE, you know, those secrets, the things he'll never be able to tell. He never talked about the poetry and his role in that in the war. Jerry will never discovered his own participation in that either. It was all kept a secret. Everything was kept a secret. This feels like this was just another one of those secrets, never to be told. As the magpies have it.
Chatted about on Twitter at some point, and you know, being like, we don't necessarily know, you know, it's never, it's something talked around about and not overtly stated that, you know, Vanessa knows or not. But obviously, like, she's a very shrewd judge of character, and yeah. So I don't know. In my personal headcanon, I feel like she does know.
Yeah, that seems to be a pretty common theme through a lot of the scenes, is that Vanessa is really good at understanding people, and I don't want to say manipulating, but sort of swimming through the sea of human psychology, right? And so it seems unlikely that she would not have figured it out.
But equally likely that if she had figured it out, she might not have said anything very successfully for the rest of her life, because after all, she managed to cover up the fact that her husband was blind. So, you know, at least somewhat successful. Yeah. So yeah, very, very in keeping for her.
Did we ever find out what happened to Walter?
Another unanswered question. We don't really get the end of the story. We see him watching the movie. Or listening to the movie with Vanessa's aid, but yeah, we don't find out what happened to him at the end, or how he became blind in the war.
I thought it was interesting yesterday. I re-listened to some things, and you see more evidence of Walter's blindness and Vanessa helping him out that I didn't pick up on, like the first twice that I listened to it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the Christmas cracker right here on your side plate.
Yes. Yeah. That was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
On the Vanessa thing, somebody just mentioned that thing that Finnemore tweeted about saying it's non-canonical, but yes, Vanessa is very clearly nobody's fool. So I think maybe the question has been answered to her satisfaction. She knows as much as she needs to know.
And it's also
necessarily to the audience's satisfaction about who's been told what.
But it's also like it's not necessarily an unanswered question in that sense, in that they have a non-nuclear family, and that's what's so beautiful about it. Like, you know, she's got also 2 mums and, you know, this very close father figure in the form of an uncle. Which is enough for me, definitely.
I guess she might feel it's not her secret to share as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good point. Yes. Yeah. Right. I think when we head back to the main room in a bit, I was told a big countdown by C1. We're supposed to have somebody nominated to say what we thought was our great insight, if we came up with one. Do we have anybody who'd like to be the speaker? If not, I'm happy to do it. And what is it we think we want to tell people?
I'm happy to chat if no one else does.
Yeah, lovely. Always happy to have a volunteer. So I'm trying to do my best to summarize what we've just been chatting about. So I think, I suppose the main bits was our frustration in there's so much that's so beautifully plotted that we believe all our questions do have answers. We just don't know them. Because John Funderwood does such an amazing job of just
we don't know what was cut out.
All this creativity. So we do kind of believe that all our questions will have the answers.
I do find it comforting that I believe that
whether we'll ever find them out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not every author knows about the holes in their work.
If Vanessa is nobody's fool, and she clearly isn't, was she really hit by a bridge?
So there's a really great thing about that. I did a search for the term hit by a bridge, and I actually found an article from pre-war times, using that expression specifically for somebody who was on a narrowboat and was hit by a bridge.
Yeah, it's a line in the Erie Canal, low bridge, everybody down.
Oh, right. That's interesting. I've never come across it. That's interesting.
Is that, yeah, the bridges weren't particularly high, and you couldn't, if it was a long tunnel, the horse couldn't bring you through, so you'd have to walk along the inside of the bridge.
Okay.
I mean, I can totally see Vanessa talking away, explaining something to somebody what they should be doing or something like that, and just facing the wrong direction and being clobbered by a bridge. That's my scenario.
Yes.
But she was just too distracted by telling somebody else what was going on, explaining something, and just forgot sort of where she was going.
Trying to get her scarf back from the horse.
Yeah.
My headcanon on that is that on the canals, some of the lower bridges can be raised or lowered or swung to the side, so to let through craft. So I think bridges can actually move and genuinely can sneak up on you.
Always sneaky bridges.
Yeah, I don't think we ever found out the name of her friend on the boat.
She's called
I
Queenie.
I thought Queenie was the name of their horse.
Oh, I'd have to go back and listen. I'm not sure now.
I don't think Queen was the horse. I think Queen was a companion.
Good. Okay.
But I don't know.
I have to listen to it
It's
again.
Unanswered.
Such a
It
chore.
does seem likely.
Yeah, I
if
think I
she
could only.
Oh, sorry. It does seem likely if she was in the transport program during the war that they would have at least 2 women assigned, because you wouldn't have a single woman alone on the riverboats at night, right? That would be ridiculous.
True. Yeah, so I think she was just random mother. I can't remember what that service bit was called, but yeah, and as you said, another recruit, another signee.
Was in the Ministry of Transport, I think, wasn't she?
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah.
It is
And you
interesting to
need
think
more
about
than one.
those different war jobs, because those land girls, but to hear the different ones as well that you just never crossed your minds.
Yeah, like obviously you'd need more than one person to run a boat.
I'm Padlet to see if there's any of the question of things we still don't know. The one about nobody seems to know who Alan is,
Yes.
which is in the conversation when it comes out, as everybody had already guessed. Deborah said she promised Alan she wouldn't give it away, but we don't actually know who Alan is.
True.
I guess we just assume he's a friend or a boyfriend at the time.
Yeah, that's all I can think of. It's
best friend.
A random person that she's talking about. Although I'm now struggling to think, I should know this is terrible. Who did Deborah? Deborah married Cliff, didn't she? That's Ross's dad. Yeah.
But they clearly separated quite early. Ross has to make 2 phone calls, and needs the money to make 2 calls for both his mum and his dad. So it's clear they're separated even at that age.
That's a good point. I never registered that. But yeah, you're right. He does. Other ones, things we still don't know. The interesting choice of Mrs. Tiggywinkle as Patrick Nightingale's favourite book. Has anyone worked out any symbolism for that one?
I mean, isn't it all about? Isn't Mrs. Tiggywinkle? Is that the one being rolled up in pastry? Am I mixing up my?
Mrs. Tiggywinkle's the porcupine, the hedgehog washerwoman. And
yeah.
I loved that one as a kid, so that was really funny. I haven't thought about it in years.
Clearly, we're going to have to go into this because I bet there's some symbolism there, obviously.
Unless the symbolism is the fact that there is no
must
symbolism.
be. I meant to try and reread it for a amount of time.
The name is just excellent and has to be a favorite book of somebody.
Yeah.
One thing I would love to have known what the rest of the family's reaction was to Peer Pressure's hits with woof, woof, woof. And if they actually had to sit Ross down and explain where this actually came from or something, or have they just let it go? it's clearly something in the family. I don't know, it just feels like, and obviously, since it's such a toe tapper, that would clearly have had to be a big hit for Peer Pressure as well. So at some point, it should have come up. I'd like to know that conversation.
I've got to say, I love the name because it's actually the name of a nightclub in Aberystwyth. Again, we've got a pier, so I do love the name. But I'd rather assume they were all really pleased that the song was carrying on.
Yeah,
they'd be delighted.
I think so.
I was in that band for a really long time. It was like 12 years or something, which is impressive.
I'm aware of people. I've friends who have been in their bands since university. They're now in their 50s. They still perform. They do weddings and things like that, and they do a show, a thing every now and then. But yeah, those things do kind of keep going. One thing I did, because of course I was Googling, apparently John Finnemore's favourite episode of Arrested Development is Peer Pressure.
Oh, nice.
Spent the same way, so yeah, he nicked it, which is fine.
No, it's just creative reuse.
Yeah. Yes, plagiarise. Just remember always to call it research, to quote Tom Lehrer, not to
absolutely. Tom Lehrer is an interesting name to drop, of course, because we've got that was the other thing. Was Jerry auditioning for That Was the Week That Was?
He was too well, I don't know, because that was I looked it up because I thought the same. That was 1961 in wherever that was, Shepherd's Bush.
Yeah.
That was the week that was start 1962 and well into 1962.
Okay.
But it's exactly that, isn't it?
It's that because it's
I did my research on that.
Because it's basically, it's almost like he's ready to be Tom Lehrer if he has the opportunity.
Yeah. Oh yes, I could well imagine Jerry as a Tom Lehrer.
Do we know what, like he probably does and I've just missed it, like what he does end up doing for a living?
Like
commercial songwriter, jingles and etc.
Yeah,
He does that one for Soho Studios, but it could be. I mean, in a past life, I used to be a radio advertising copywriter, and there are people who absolutely definitely doing that job into the 90s of writing songs for companies, and some very good ones, and sometimes just ripping off whatever was in the charts. But yeah, absolutely, that was a long-standing kind of career. And you would go to these people and you would say, "We need a song for this tile company. Please, can you write a song about tiles?" And they would come back with something laborious, fantastic, ages long, and you'd end up using about 3 seconds of it in the radio advert. But the songs would exist. So that was absolutely a career, and would actually be perfect for like wordsmiths or people who like poems and a bit of a musical ear, and it could well make a good career.
I want to say example, I think the Goodies did one, Bill Oddie wrote one for Potterton Boilers or something like that. Weird world.
But yeah, that was
he was in something advertising on the creative side. I hope he was happy in whatever he did. He was such a lovely chap, Jerry.
I think of Jerry as maybe the happiest person in the series. It seems like it was kind of the making of him that he got to stay with Uncle Newt during the war. And I mean, not that Vanessa and Walter aren't lovely, but somehow it just seemed to raise him to a higher level. And Jerry just almost always seems full of joy.
I mean, even what must have been, the great tragedy for him, losing words. Because I mean, that was, that the thing he was brought up as a kid to be a poet. It becomes his career, writing songs, and then he can't find the words, and all the other words come through as well. But he, as we see, well, that was definitely frustrating for him at some point. There was a very much, it didn't seem to faze him too much, even when making his nonsense.
It was interesting with that with him and the words, and was it Walter was Vanessa's husband with the sight, because they were both like looking at everybody on the train, and that seemed to be a game that they played together, and then he lost his sight. So it was interesting, those two choice of
the other thing just about that as well, I looked at Long Buckby was apparently was the famous home of a guy called Stanley Unwin. I don't know how people know Stanley Unwin now. The gobbledygook man. Guy. He created his own gobbledygook language and became famous for it. Did lots of stand-up. He turns up in Carry On films, lots of TV stuff, because of this Unwinese, which sounded almost English, but all the words were just mixed up. and that is really reflected in Jerry's speech. It feels very Unwinese. I'm sure there has to be some strong link between Long Buckby, Stanley Unwin, and John Finnemore and Jerry in this, and I demand he tells us.
That sounds very likely. Did you have your hand up, Jill? Did you have your hand up, Jill? Do you want to ask something?
With
I do love
less
how
than 3 minutes to go, what are we wanting to feed back as our main
Good
thing?
question.
Well,
Aside from the, I was going to say the feeling that at least John has all of the questions answered, even if we never will.
There are some secrets never to be told.
Yes, yes.
Did Uncle Newt ever tell the family the secret of the hat tearing?
Oh yeah, that was a tale for another time.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he did. Not then, but at some point.
Basically, our answer to sum up is that John Finnemore is a genius.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good summary. Very good summary.
I want to see his diagram. I want to see his big thing on the wall with all the different lines and.
Yeah, I am totally assuming it has an entire room of just postcards, bits of string, everything. Probably entire house.
What we're now going to have to do is listen to the entirety of all the previous series for the previous appearances of Newt.
I don't know. I feel they're in different universes.
I know.
I agree. I don't think because we get told it's often to be, since you asked me for a story, I don't think those things are Newt. I think you're right of it being different universes, so to speak.
Yeah. Maybe they're all MLJs. And where is the kazoo now? In 2020, well, I want to know who's got it. It was last used for pancakes. I think it was last used
for the pancakes. The last,
Yeah. So where is it now, and who's got it?
Perhaps Hilla stood on it one day when it got too annoying.
Is it part of Peer Pressure's repertoire?